And that's it. Welcome to Call It What You Want. Right now, we're on YouTube. We're also going to be simulcasting live on the Golazo Network. And the U.S. men's national team just wrapped up their, I guess, Copa America appearance with the group stage with just one win and 2 losses. How would you sum up this match, Tony? I'll kick it off with you. I know the energy is pretty low from us given the expectations we had for the U.S. men's national team going into this tournament. So how do you feel about tonight?
Disappointed, obviously, because the expectation was that the U.S. would go through, as you kind of alluded to. I did think that the energy was the best that we've seen from the group, although in the end, you're going to get judged on results, and they didn't get the result that they needed tonight. They were looking for a little bit of help from Panama. That was unlikely to happen, as they won 3-1 in that one, and there was a moment of hope there at 1-1. But truth be told, if you're going to sum the whole tournament up, for me, a failure.
Brian, you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, when you go in with expectations of at least getting to the semifinals, I think this is definitely a failure. The problem I have with it is that there's a failure of certain parts. I mean, there's certain parts that went well, and there's certain parts that didn't go well. And in the end, if you don't score goals and if you make poor decisions, then you're going to be held accountable. And that's unfortunately what's happened in this tournament.
Well, I want to catch everyone up because we're live on Golazo Network. So thanks for joining us. I'm here with 2 established veterans, World Cup veterans, icons for U.S. men's national team, and Brian McBride and Tony Meola. And unfortunately, this isn't going to be a very positive conversation, a rosy conversation had the U.S. taking care of business. So we were just talking about how do we feel about tonight, given the expectations going into Copa America. So with that being said, where do we go from here? Brian, I'll start with you. What are you thinking? How do you feel? What's kind of the positives and the negatives?
Yeah, I think the positives are the fact that the players understood, what was needed of them, and their attitude and the execution of commitment and working off the ball and not being, overrun by the physicality of a really strong Uruguay team. In the end, that's great, but there also has to be that continuing progression of putting, strong teams under pressure. And we didn't do it enough. I thought there were some good performances individually, and a really good commitment from the whole group. But we're still lacking that little bit that's going to take us over the top to where teams like Uruguay are going to be afraid. And when you get into the physicality and the team sees you being strong enough to handle the physicality, then that quality has to make them question themselves. And unfortunately, we weren't there yet.
Tony, do you feel the same way as Brian? Because right now I feel like I'm trying to bottle up this. I feel like I want to explode, but I'm trying to stay. Brian's keeping me real composed right now. I'm trying to maintain the fire, but I'll let you maybe try and cool me down because I'm bubbling inside. I think you're on mute, Tony. Can you hear him, Brian?
Yeah, I can't hear him. Tony, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, you got me?
We got you
now we got you.
Apologies here. I was listening to Brian. I didn't want to. I got a house full, so I'm trying to mute everyone out other than Brian. Yeah, look, as I said, upset with the result, upset with not going through. I think that's the big picture. We got to a moment where we all said we didn't want to have to play Uruguay in match day 3 to be able to have to go through to the next round. Well, I'm sure we'll digest everything that happened from an individual standpoint with players. The one thing that sticks out to me is that as Brian said, we lacked a little bit of quality when we played at the highest speed, but we match the speed of the game with an Uruguay side that does it as good as anybody. So for me, that's kind of the bare minimum moving forward with any game I want to watch from this team, because quite honestly, in 2 match days, it was slow, it was lethargic. In a lot of ways, it was boring. We still need to score more goals, clearly, against the top teams. It's still kind of raw right now to make complete evaluations on where you want everything to go. But again, I'm going to say what I said in the open before we came on the Golazo Network. We didn't reach the goal, so in the end, it was a failure.
Well, all right. I'm just going to put out there, it's a massive failure. I said it before this Copa America tournament started. I said, in a group that is relatively weak, I mean, it's really weak outside of Uruguay, right? It's Panama, who we know, who we face, who can't even, really compete with us when we're playing at our best, and a Bolivia team that, frankly, there are some USL teams that would beat. So in saying that, we came out, I guess, relatively strong against Bolivia early, but we didn't score 3, 4, 5, which the game offered. It was there for the taking. And so you're questioning, okay, maybe the attacking players are a little rusty, but you feel pretty good heading into the Panama match. And then the red card, and given the red card, I still think we should get a result against Panama. We scored down a man. We scored, and we're up 1-0 with Balogun. So, okay, I get it. They put in a performance. You're playing down a man. We've all had to play a match where you're down a man. You got to do a lot of extra work. It comes into being really tactically disciplined and countering when the time is right and keeping possession when the time is right, because we're still so much far better than Panama. Let's be real. If we're talking about winning or going as far as we possibly can in a World Cup, and you can't get a result on home soil against Panama, I'm sorry. There are issues. And so we put all our eggs in the basket against Uruguay, which we knew that's not the best way. It's not going to give yourself the best chance to advance. And we played against Uruguay. And yes, we met the expectation in terms of intensity and urgency, but that should have been there game 1 and game 2. And if those were there in game 1 and game 2, we're not having this conversation against Uruguay. And so, yeah, the refereeing was poor against Panama. The referee was really poor against Uruguay. But in the end, that doesn't matter. Don't allow the referee to put yourself in a position to say, oh, the reason why you didn't get 3 points, the reason we didn't qualify is because of the referee. So I'm frustrated that we're at this point, because I really hoped that we would not be seeing the U.S. fail to qualify to the next round, because we need all the competitive matches we can get before a World Cup in 2026 against Brazil, against Uruguay, against Colombia, and now we got to look forward to some weak friendlies in the next window. So yes, I'm frustrated. I had high expectations, and look where we are right now. So it's hard to get over this. I know I'm not going to sleep tonight. I got to drive at 3 a.m. anyways to get to Stamford, Connecticut. So I'm coming in, eyes red, no sleep. Morning footy is going to be on fire. But if we're trying to contextualize this and just think about the match tonight, Brian, we did feel like there was an urgency. It felt to me like the players were trying to play for Greg, because they knew if they didn't perform, there possibly could be a change. Did you feel that from the guys tonight?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's an understanding that in any profession, if you're a coach and you're not winning games that you should be winning, you may have people evaluate you and let you go. And Greg knows that. There's not a question of anything that this match mattered, right? And you saw it from the players' commitment from the very beginning. And I go back, Charlie, you said that, the group didn't have the same intensity from the very beginning. They did. They just didn't execute from scoring goals in the first match. Second match, Timothy Way, by the way, who is one of the nicest individuals you'll ever meet, and just loses his head and makes a bad decision at a bad time, a really bad time, and it costs the team. And so all of that has been covered. That's not like anything that we haven't talked about or people don't understand. So you wanted to see a reaction today, and you saw the reaction. And the reaction was great in the sense of, players were committed. They knew they were going to get into some strong tackles, but being able to then come out of those tackles and know that you're not being, pushed aside by a team physically. The first half we were definitely on top. The problem is then when you're on top, you need to take advantage of that and score your goals. And we didn't really cause enough problems. And, Florian going down was a big issue because he was sharp, probably holding the ball up better than I've ever seen him against two center backs, or at least a six dropping down. And then for him to go down injured, I think that was a real effect on the game. So all in all, I'll come back to Charlie, to what you're saying. You wanted to see it from the very beginning of this tournament, and the execution in the final third wasn't necessarily where we needed it to be. And that is going to be the reason why we come out of this with, not going to the next round.
Tony, we started with Gio Reyna in the right left wing, and we moved Christian Pulisic to the right, where we see him with AC Milan. Do you think that was the right call to bring Musa in and move Reyna there? Or would you have rather kept that midfield together, play Reyna as a 10, and then bring I know Haji Wright had his opportunity and it was blocked, but would you have rather see Haji Wright there? Would you have rather see Josh Sargent there? Would you have rather seen Ricardo Pepi up there with Balogun? How do you feel that the game started, and do you think that Greg Berhalter got it at least right in that initial 11?
Yeah, on the preview show that Jimmy and I did, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, this was basically the lineup I had. I did have Reyna on the right-hand side and Pulisic on the left, but of course that was switched. So I'm okay with the starting lineup. I don't know that it had anything to do with starting lineup or no starting lineup. I'm still, as you know, and you've come to know me now over the last 6 or 8 months, and my thoughts on the game. I'm a big picture guy with regards to reaching goals, and I'm finding it hard right now to think of positives in this thing. Yeah, there's no doubt, but Balogun for me is a positive, right? Christian Pulisic's attitude over the last couple games, a positive. There's moments that you can think about, instances you can think about that are positives, but I'm about moving forward and advancing, and again, when you think about major tournaments, teams like Uruguay have been beaten before. Spain's been beaten in a major tournament. You know better than anybody. Argentina's been beaten in a major tournament. Colombia's been beaten in a major tournament. I think if you take this game in a bottle and say we lost to Uruguay 1-0, but we played at this intensity and we played with this pace, people are okay with it. But I think when you look at it big picture, and you look at the last, 3 weeks since the Colombia game total, maybe 2.5 weeks, whatever it is, we lost 4 or 5 international games. Mm-hmm. We beat Bolivia. Bolivia, and that was it. But I will say, if they came out with the same speed of play, the same intensity that we saw tonight, it was a desperation, if you will, that, hey, and we've all been in those spots, then I don't know that I would have such a problem with it. But I just, for me, I can't. I'm looking at the big picture. I just can't live with losing 4 of the last 5 games. I just can't.
Brian, they lost 4 of the last 5 games, but in terms of tactical adjustments and substitutions and timing of those substitutions, how do you feel Greg did from match 1 to match 2 to match 3?
We talked about it on other podcasts about certain substitutions, and everybody has their own opinions and own thoughts, right? So I think the evaluation side of how those players came in and did, the second match was, against Panama, was probably my least favorite substitution side of things. I thought today, when Florian went down and you knew you needed someone to hold the ball up, and Ricardo, it's not his strong set, that part sort of question. I question, Josh is a little bit better in that. And we get in nitpicking, right? Because we've seen Pepe come on and be a substitute and score goals. So the substitution side of things, I think you can always question unless everything goes perfectly. And if it doesn't go perfectly, you can always question that. For me, I think when you look at the way the team was set up, I thought, to Tony's point, I liked Christian staying on the left and Gio coming on the right, and then being able to slide back into the middle and come inverted. But it didn't set up right in the process because Joe Scally's not going to go over. So it actually worked. I thought it worked really well with Gio playing on the left. I thought Gio had a really good game. I thought Christian had a really good game. And I thought they were both up for the physicality, which, sometimes Gio is not up for that. So, when I look at this situation, they were put in the situation that was going to be an uphill battle. And unfortunately, they weren't able to climb that hill.
We're going to take a break. When we come back on the other side, we'll continue this conversation. Plus, we're going to get into player ratings, manager ratings, not only for the Uruguay match, but I guess we're going to put in perspective of the whole tournament. This isn't going to get any more rosy. So thanks for joining. I see the comments are flying. We'll be back in just a second.
Well, you need your sports news anywhere?
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
Welcome back to Call It What You Want. Remember, we are live as well on the Golazo Network, as well as YouTube. And once the show's over on the Golazo Network, you can see us back on the live stream for YouTube. To go back to the conversation around what we've seen from these guys and the substitutions, I'm going to just call it what it is. I just thought tonight, especially when you saw Joe Scally go down, we're down 1-0, and he had Shaq Moore ready to go in. I thought, have you lost your mind? This is a game that you, at the very least, have to draw, let alone win once Bolivia got scored on again by Panama. But that's the time to go into attack mode. Throw in the pieces that at the end you saw him starting to panic and just say, okay, I'm going to throw in all these strikers and completely gut the midfield. But I thought, that was the moment that you say, send a message to the team that, hey, we're going for it. This is the team the game we got to win. We're not looking to draw. And I know he was going like this 1-1 because Bolivia had leveled the score. But this is a match that you got to push to win absolutely after we lose to Panama, because you couldn't ever count on Bolivia holding a tie or getting a result against Panama because we saw how bad they were and eventually they crumbled. But Tony, how do you feel about the substitutions? Because I was left a little frustrated after each match. I thought, okay, that's not the right guy to bring on, or that's not the right like for like, or changing of the tactics. It's, there are so many things that could have been different, I think, in all three matches.
Yeah, Charlie, let me just clear one thing up. I said we lost 4 of 5. We drew Brazil, right? So we lost 3 of 5, and we drew Brazil in the match. But for me, same stuff in the end, same feelings in the end. Substitution patterns, yeah. Well, the first one hurt us with Flo. Brian touched on it earlier. I thought he was in the things he was asked to do, holding up the ball. He spun his defender a couple times. He and Christian had a really good connection. How many balls did we finally roll into a forward's feet today, right? Where we cleared, they were playing man-to-man in the midfield. We opened up the middle of the field. We rolled a couple in, and I thought, oh, that was pretty refreshing. So I thought he did his job for the most part. Obviously, he took a massive hit offside on that play, but had moments.
And now we're back live on the Golazo Network. So Tony, go ahead, carry on.
Yeah, with regards to the substitutions, I wrote down 56 minutes, Shaq Moore, and I wrote down here, I'm looking at my notes, question mark, because I thought the same as you. I'm like, okay, Joe Scally was clearly hurting. I don't know. He had some type of leg injury. And I was thinking the same thing. Like, now's your time to go to 3 in the back. Like, now you have like an out here. Like, don't waste a sub where you put another right back in that you're going to have to take off in 10 minutes because – that's literally what I wrote down. 56 minutes, Shaq Moore, question mark.
I said in my head, I said,
you guys are hilarious.
I said, Shaq, sit your butt down. What are you talking, Brian?
Yeah, like
it's so disrespectful. It is. It's so
no, Bryce. Sorry, I'm not being disrespectful to Shaq Moore.
Yeah.
This isn't about Shaq Moore. This is about why are we putting in another right back in at that point when we're going to have to take him out in 10 minutes anyway because we need a goal. We need to go get a goal. This is Shaq Moore or anybody else that was a right back on the team. He just happened to be the guy standing up. So for me, this isn't about Shaq Moore. This is about go to 3 in the back at that time and let's go find the points that we needed. But
Brian, you like that? Did you like that sub? Honestly, and we've talked about it. He's not going to give you anything in anything in the attacking half.
I totally disagree with you guys. About what he can give you in the attacking half. Go take a look at some of his videos. Trust me, he actually can cross the ball really well. He gets forward really well, and he defends really good 1v1. Because what you're going to need to do is go 1v1 at the back. All right, and I know you're doing that face there, Charlie, and I've taken a lot of crap already on this situation. But at that point in time, they were tied, right? They were tied in the other game.
But they were down 1-0.
They were tied, right? They were down 1-0. You're still thinking that you have to win this game, right? But you have to be solid in the back. So this was like the 65th minute. You can't throw like everything caution to the wind against Uruguay. You can't. That's my opinion, right? Now,
this is when it's not going to give you anything in the attacking half, and we've talked. Look at
Charlie.
MLS.
This I completely disagree with you.
Nothing in MLS. He gives you nothing in MLS going forward.
Go take a look at the Champions Cup. Him playing in Champions Cup. Go take a look. When he's allowed to get forward, he provides something. Okay, so you can take that video aside. It's no problem. My point to you is he also gives you solidity. So it wasn't like 65th minute. You can't throw all caution to the wind. You can't. So listen, I understood it, and eventually Greg didn't make that decision, right? Which okay, that's fine. And we then start putting in forward after forward, and there's no continuity. That's the problem I have with the substitution side of it. There has to be a progression of what you're doing to be able to make sure that you still are going to be solid as a group, but also cause the other team problems. And know the connectivity is there. Because if you put in 3 forwards, and I can tell you this, and you guys know this, because Charlie, I'm sure anytime you saw 3 or 4 forwards go on in the top line, it was just going to all be direct, and there's no connection. You're playing into Uruguay's way to defend because it's all about defending and committing and then catching them on the counter. So for me, it was one of those things where, yeah, I could understand why Shaq might go in. Eventually, he didn't go in.
At that point, honestly, I'd rather play Brendan Aronson at right back or even going Weston McKennie because as much as Weston worked in this game and running, he was largely ineffective. I wanted more from Weston in I'd say all 3 matches. I felt like he didn't really put his stamp on any of the matches going forward. In terms of work rate and getting in right positions, yeah, you felt like he was buzzing around, but getting on the ball and making decisive passes and playing 1-2s and whipping balls like we saw from him in the World Cup, we didn't see that from him, especially tonight. So I would have had no problem with saying, hey, Weston, you're going to play right back and just get forward, bomb forward. You still have him on the pitch, and then bring in somebody, like you said, who will be able to connect the strikers in the midfield. But, man, I was left wanting more, if you will. Tony, where you stand on this?
Yeah, I just don't know why the thought process is throwing caution to the wind when you put another forward on. For me, I don't get that thought process, right? I would have shaded. That's what I would have shaded Weston to the right. I don't know if I'd have made him a right back or a right midfielder, because we know he's always going to track back anyway because it's in his DNA to do that. But for me, we were desperate to score a goal. We took one shot in the first half, I believe. One shot, and I don't have the second half stats in front of me right now because we came on right away. But the reality is that we still needed more in the attack. And what we were doing, look, if they had so much faith in Shaq Moore, why not sub him when Joe Scally is literally on one leg? I mean, they had already called. If you saw the trainers, they were calling for the sub.
Yeah, Tony,
right?
You can't do that. Then you use your second sub in the first half. You can't do that because then you only have one more window.
Second half, Brad. This is 65th minute. Joe Scally went down in the box.
But he went down in the first half and the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not talking about I'm sorry. I'm talking about the second half one, 65th minute. And they actually turned around and called for the change of the sub. So, I mean, if they believe in him so much, then put the fresh legs on and roll with it. I thought it was a moment where you could have shifted things and got another forward on the field at the time. Look, we ended up doing, I don't know what minute Haji Wright came in. I want to say it was like, I didn't write it down. 79th minute. You had another 20 minutes to try and do that for me. And in a moment like
Josh
this,
already came in. So Josh already came in.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, so Josh already came in.
Haji Wright came in 79th minute I got here.
Right, but Josh is already in, so you have two forwards on.
Right, and Haji Wright went over to the left-hand side, and Christian dropped a little bit underneath.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, I don't know why that's throwing caution to the wind. You're putting them under pressure instead of just sitting back and absorbing all of this pressure. We took one shot in the first half. That's the reality. As good as we played, we had one shot in the game. Okay, here we go. One shot on goal in the first half, 0 in the second half.
Tone, do you really feel like we were absorbing pressure? I mean, they weren't creating anything.
First half we were good. First half we were good.
Even the second half, the goal comes off of a set piece. And
yeah, we got to get to that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't wait to hear your opinion on the save and how it came back. So that'll be fun.
And it's right on cue. So let's start with our player ratings. We're going to start with goalkeeper Matt Turner, and then we're going to go from right to left across the back line. So Tony, give us your player rating for Matt Turner.
Yeah, I put a 4.5. We're doing 10, right? We're doing the 10, 1 through 10. Yeah, yep. 4.4 or 4.5. Kicking was, there were 4 times where he played the ball at play, but for me, the big one is the goal. The ball cannot be left in that moment, in that area. It's got to go out to your right. It's got to go with speed, because even if a guy is running in at full speed, it would make it even harder to have a first-time shot on goal. So if you have to do it, you have to do it with speed. Yeah, so not a good night for me. Brave for Matt Turner to play. It didn't look like the injury affected him from a movement standpoint, for at least visually. He probably was feeling something, but a 4 or 4.5.
Okay, now move to Scally.
Scally, I actually liked throughout the game in moments. He tried to get forward in the first half. So I'll go right across the line here. Joe Scally, 5.5. Chris Richards, 5. I still think he gives far too many balls away. Tim Ream, 5.5. Anthony Robinson, I thought, was the best. And he, for me, sorry, I need my glasses. I gave him a 6.0. I can't see it. I gave him a 6.0 because I just thought his effort tonight, once again, which is something that is a constant with him, getting up and down the flanks. He gives you everything, man. Everything he's got all the time. Okay.
Brian?
Yeah, I'll give Matt 4.5 because he understands that. It's better. He's better than that. He's a great shot stopper. But to push it back into that area is probably, basically the costly error. Joe Scally, I'll give a 6. I thought he was good defensively. There wasn't a problem. We know what he gets going forward. Chris Richards, again, I agree with Tony in the sense that it's his footwork is still questionable, which it shouldn't be the case because we've seen him in play in defensive center midfield, so he's had to play with his back to goal and still do well with his feet. So I'll give 5.5, and then Tim Ream, I'm giving a 6.5. I thought he played well. I thought there wasn't any issues. He was never caught out. And then Anthony Robinson, yeah, I'll give a 7. He's the one player that is like the wild card, and teams don't know how to handle him. As soon as you see him running, they're like, what do we do? They send another player and they want to foul him. And I thought he played well.
Yeah, for me, Matt Turner's a 4 because, yes, the goal is on him and the way that he gives up the rebound. But I know he's got a leg contusion, but every time he had the ball at his feet, it was a giveaway or was out of bounds. It was really poor. So at that point, just tell your guys, don't pass me the ball. I can't use my feet. Don't pass me the ball. Right back, I thought this was Joe Scally's one of his best games I've ever seen him play, especially in the red, white, and blue. So I give him a 6.5. Just defending. You knew what he's going to give you. He's not going to give you much in the attacking phase of the game, but he tried at moments to get forward. So no problem there. I thought Chris Richards and Ream, you're dealing with Darwin Nunez. This is one of the top strikers in the world in terms of being in form right now for Uruguay. So given that it wasn't the sharpest with Chris Richards, I'd still give him a 5.5, and for Tim Ream a 6.5 because I thought his defending was a little bit better, but he was much better with the ball. And then left back, Anthony Robinson, he always causes problems because he's so active, but he did give the ball away quite a bit, even though he was active and causing problems. So defending and attacking was pretty sharp. I'm leaning towards a 6.5, but I'm giving him a 7 because it's Uruguay. So I feel like we're pretty spot on with that. I see a lot of the guys in the comments, a lot of people in the comments saying, hey, we're pretty good with that. This is a strong Uruguay side. We did match the intensity. If not, we were a little bit better, but this is a pretty fair rating for the guys in the back. So we're going to take another brief break. When we come back on the other side, we're going to continue this conversation, go to the midfields, go to the strikers, and we're going to get to Greg Berhalter on the backside. So don't go anywhere.
At CBS Sports Galazzo Network, we're bringing you the game.
Madness of Messi arrives!
Breaking down the game.
This is unlike anything else in the world.
And changing the game.
Get it all for nil.
That means free.
Whoa.
And all day long!
24/7.
Hey, welcome back to Call It What You Want. I'm your guy, Charlie Davies, joined by two legends in McBride and Tony Meola. And we just gave our ratings for the defensive players and the keeper. Now we're going to move to the midfield. So, Tony, take it away with your rating for our 3 midfielders.
Yeah, I went the same rating, whether it's a 5 or 5.5 for all 3 guys in the midfield. Tyler Adams, just a really good effort. I'm sure he's going to be feeling this one at the end of the night. Weston McKennie, same job he always gives us. And Eunice, I thought, was a decent addition. Second half, he faded a little bit for me and didn't find the game all that much. But, I'm splitting hairs with 5s and 5.5s in the midfield.
Brian?
Yeah. So for me, our midfield was defensively really strong. Didn't allow them to have anything, which I think we won that battle. I thought that Tyler's energy and reading was really good. Eunice, his first touch was off, which I was surprised. Like anytime the ball came to him, it was like a little heavier touch. So that part was like disappointing to see. I think it was probably the magnitude of the match and being thrown in there for his first start in this competition. And Weston, I thought was solid, and I'll give my ratings in a second. But that group didn't allow their midfield to overrun us, and that's what we've seen from Uruguay throughout this competition. So that part of it, as a whole, I thought the game plan worked. I thought they didn't allow them to create the way they have been so far in this tournament. So that alone gives me a base of 6. It's Tyler, I'll give 6.5. Weston, I'll give a 6, and Eunice, I'll give a 6 because we weren't as sharp with the ball, especially Eunice, who I think the world of. But they were up for the game, and they didn't allow their midfield to take us over.
Welcome back to Call It What You Want. We're live on the Golazo Network and YouTube. So we just gave our midfield ratings, at least Tony and Brian McBride did. Tony 5.5s across the board. Brian went 6 for Yunus Musa, 6 for Weston McKennie, and a 6.5 for Tyler Adams. And he gave a very good description on why he gave those ratings. And I'm going to go
in
a similar
recap.
vein.
I give a recap if you want.
Yeah, give it a recap.
Yeah, it was basically their midfield's been their strongest part of Uruguay's game, and they didn't overrun us. We actually, our midfield outperformed them. So even though we lost the game, I thought our group was together. The ideas were good.
Yeah, so I think for me, the same thing. Tyler was all over the place. He brought the energy, but maybe lacked some of the composure in his distribution out of midfield to break the lines. And, there are a couple passes here and there, but I think we're accustomed to seeing him be a little bit more tidy with the ball. And then Yunus Musa, at times, I think maybe he was too focused with his defending and positioning that he didn't have it when it came to with the ball at his feet, where we see him dribble by 3-4 people and create some mismatches, and that wasn't the factor tonight. And then Weston McKennie, for me, he was kind of invisible in terms of the attacking phase of the game. So I liked his work rate. I liked that he helped in supporting defending, but on the attacking side of the game, it was lacking. So a 6 for Weston, a 6 for Yunus Musa, and a 6.5 for Tyler Adams. That sounds just about right. So now we're going to move to the attackers, the front three. Take it away, Tony.
Oh, you like me first tonight?
Yeah, Tony, you got the tough one. Going first is always tough.
Flo, I thought gave everything he had for the minutes that he was in. I went with a 6.5 for him, just because he did so many different things that we really haven't seen him do. We haven't seen him do a lot of. He did against Panama, so 2 solid performances, of course, 2 goals. But for tonight, 6.5. I gave Christian Pulisic a 6.5, not because everything came off tonight for Christian Pulisic, but he was willing to try things. He showed me he had a little Clint Dempsey in him. Remember when Clint Dempsey played? Like he tried things, didn't always come off, but the defender was always thinking about what Christian was going to do. A couple of really good free kicks. Effort was good. Energy was good. And the leadership. I mean, he was in everybody's face the entire night. And then Gio Reyna, I'm up in the air. I don't know how to rate this one, and I'm struggling. He did some really good things. He drew a couple of. He's really smart when he's in trouble and he draws some free kicks. That part I think is like there's an art to that. So I'm anywhere between, depending on how you look at it, a 6, 6.5. Like we're in and around the same, but still wanted more from him in the final moments. When we finally got into the 18-yard box and near the goal, wanted that final moment for him to be a little bit better. But that's where I am. All 6s, 6.5s.
Brian?
Yeah, I'm right there. I think the one thing we saw from Gio, especially in the first half when he laid that through ball with a perfect pace to Florian, I mean, that's the Gio Reyna that we're so excited to see. I thought Christian, playing out right for the first time for the U.S. in a long time, did well. Wasn't able to do as much as he's done, especially in the first game, but in the second game too, when he had his opportunities. And then, Florian, I thought Florian was excellent while he was in and you could see the confidence in him. So I give 6.5s across the board.
Yeah, Tony, I think I'm with you in regards to Gio Reyna. It was the right passes, but if no one does anything on the opposite end, then you don't really get the credit, because there were 2 passes in particular where they're half chances, but you need the player to take care of business and put a shot on goal and score that goal. And so therefore, when the attacker doesn't put it away, that pass is long gone and it's forgotten. So I think for Christian, I liked his work rate. I liked the attitude. I think he was trying as much as he could. So I like to give him a 7 tonight. And then for Gio, a 6.5, and for Balogun, a 6.5. Those would be my ratings. But overall, you feel like, man, this team, given what we saw tonight, really underperformed. And it comes down to that Panama game, the second game, where had they taken advantage of the opportunity when they had 11 before the Tim Weah,
but Charlie, that's not performance. That's dealing with what's been going on, like what's happening on the field, in my opinion, right? So, and that factors in everything. I'm not saying that doesn't matter, but the commitment and the performance was like where you'd want to see. The execution and scoring goals and creating opportunities, no, I agree with you there.
Okay. Well, we got to take a quick break. On the flip side, we will talk about Greg Berhalter, the expectations for Greg coming into this tournament, what we thought of Greg, the rating for Greg for tonight and for the whole tournament, and what should we look forward to in the future. Don't go anywhere.
An unsub, a seasoned one, and he's leaving a calling card.
How do we find a ghost? I have a plan.
Welcome back. We are still just live on YouTube, and we will be eventually live back on Golazo Network. So in hearing about the performance aspect and the intensity, and then you said, Brian, that they brought the intensity, they had the right performance, they just didn't execute. And for me, part of the performance is the execution. So when you're on the pitch, delivering results, doing whatever is necessary to get that result. So for me, even with the red card to Timothy Weah, and that's a huge setback to the team, they still got the goal. They got the go ahead to go in front. And then it's about, okay, let's be extremely resolute. They cannot break us down. Panama does not have the players to break you down. They do have the players to execute on set pieces if you give them silly fouls, if you leave them wide open for counterattacks and in transition, if you give the ball away trying to build out of the back, they will hurt you. So for me, you get the result. Whether it's a win or a draw, that was the tournament right there. It wasn't tonight. It was we lost the Copa America group stages in that match. So for me, that's the issue. And I'm trying to figure out a way to stay positive given what we've seen from this group. And Tony, we go back to the World Cup in 2022. And I think to myself, I'll be the first to say Greg did a hell of a job to get this young group, because once U.S. Soccer said this is the direction we're going, we're taking a young group with no experience for the most part, and we're going to carry them through World Cup qualifying. We'll get to the World Cup. They get out of the group stages. They gave a good performance against the Netherlands, although I'd say tactically they were I think outcoached in the end, and they were a little bit naive in a World Cup knockout stage game. So from that point, you're saying, okay, they have a good baseline of experience. Now, how are we going to see them getting forward, right? How do we see them get forward? But now we're going to welcome back to Golazo Network Live. So hold on one second. And now we're back on Golazo Network Live. So I was just talking on YouTube about Greg Berhalter and the progress he's made with this young group, getting them through the World Cup, getting them out of the knockout stages. But I said from that point, how do you get this group to be better, to be competing in a World Cup quarterfinals and semifinals, to be pushing the boundaries, to build off of what he had kind of established with that foundation? And so the real test for me was Copa America. Can you take this group forward? Can you give the country hope? And can you maybe open the eyes to some of these young players, maybe integrate some younger players, maybe you bring in some different players, but let's see something new. Let's see something different. Let's see.
And Charlie, you have
we
the
didn't.
opportunity. Yeah, you have the opportunity to bring in people who don't really respect U.S. soccer that are from South America, right? And say, oh, wait a second, this team actually is something to worry about, and that doesn't happen now. So go on, Charlie. I just wanted to add that little bit.
We fell flat. It was extremely disappointing. It was a huge failure. At the end of the day, this is a massive failure. I don't know how anyone else could call it anything else but a massive failure, given our group was so weak and we crumble out of the group stage. So, given that, Tony, where are you sitting with Greg Berhalter's rating for tonight and for the tournament?
Tonight, I don't know how to sum up tonight, if I'm being completely honest. I just look at the whole thing. I told you I'm a big picture guy. The goal was to get out of the group. That was mission number one, and we failed at that. And had we done that at the World Cup, that would have been a failure. I still think the World Cup for us was a success, because I still, as much as we maybe got out-coached against Louis van Gaal, I still think if you don't make errors at the back post, you can keep yourself in the game. But having said that, that's the way it turned out. But for me, this is a failure. So how do I rate Greg? I said the other day on Morning Footy that this whole narrative about if he wins this game, this is the signature win, and he stays, and if he loses this game, he goes. And I said, how are we judging this on one game? Like I told you, and I told Jimmy on our last podcast, why are we judging this on one game? I'm looking at the big picture again. For me, this is my personal opinion. I don't think this team has gotten better since the 2022 World Cup. And that's the concerning part for me. That's where I am with this group. Have there been good moments? Yeah. Have there been bad moments? For me, more games where I left the game going, like, what are we trying to do? Then I went, oh, man, I can't wait until Copa America, or I can't wait until the World Cup. I'm still bullish on this group. I was bullish in 2018 because I was with the youth national teams, and I had most of these players at youth national team level. And I said when we got knocked out, the day after we got knocked out of the night we got knocked out in 2017, what was that, October 10th, 2017? The next day I was on air on the radio, and I said, you know what? This team is built for 2026. I still believe that, but we still have a long way to go if we're going to get to where we want to go.
Tony, you didn't give us a rating.
Yeah, what's his rating?
4, 3.5, 4. I mean, what's the rating? I mean, we failed. We failed at the mission.
Yeah, and there's reasons for failure for sure. And some of the substitutions didn't come off. I thought, the commitment to creating continuity from the Colombia game through all the way this tournament, I thought that was not the way to go. You had the opportunity to bring players in and see if they fit into this group, and do they cause more problems than others do. There was an understanding for sure that this team loves Greg and loves playing for Greg. But when you get down to it, there's still not that cutting edge. And that cutting edge is what matters. And the cutting edge needs to come in understanding the group. So for me, that was the biggest issue throughout this, 5 games. There was never a lack of commitment, except for the last 30 minutes of the Colombia match. And to me, that's where we fell short. We fell short. Of course, the red card has a huge impact in the second game. But if we're not able to cause teams problems and create, other than the game against Bolivia, create a ton of opportunities, then there's something that's wrong. So for me, I'll give Greg a 5 because he needs to figure out how to cause other teams problems, not just get the commitment that you've seen from the guys.
And so with that being said, I'm going to give Greg a 3. And for me, it's the whole responsibility as the U.S. men's national team manager, and you know what you are getting into when you take that job, that the expectations, and actually to come back after 2022 and you've kind of set the bar high. This is what you expected. And for me, we talk about the red card against Panama, but I go back to the red card in November against Trinidad and Tobago. You had the lead. Serginho Dest gets the red card. Trinidad and Tobago, who are much worse than Panama, come back to beat you 2-1. That was the learning experience. That was the moment that this group doesn't go back. And if they did end up hurting themselves in a moment like that, that they knew how to grind it out and get a result. So that's what I'm frustrated about, because they've been there, done that. So you grow up as a team, you go through those things as a team, you come together, and then you don't let that happen again. You don't let history repeat itself. And so for me, that's a huge problem. And then I'm not even talking about what we saw from them in the Colombia friendly, Brazil friendly, and okay, you got the response. You know what's ahead of you. The 2-0 win against Bolivia, we know. As long as you got the win, you got the clean sheet, you got a couple goals, you can misfire, and that's okay. But everyone feels pretty good heading into a tournament. But the Panama game, we lost Copa America because of the Panama game. And that's what I'm trying to grapple with. And I know I respect Greg for doing what he's done with this young group and getting them to a World Cup and getting them out of knockout stage. For me, I've always said, if you don't get out of the Copa America group, at the very least, forget getting to a semifinal, but getting out of the group, for me, that's the sign that we need a new manager. So in terms of where U.S. soccer goes from here, I'm really curious to see what Matt Crocker ultimately really thinks, because they can say right now after the game, we're sticking with Greg till 2026. But in the end, across world football, world soccer, if a manager has this run of results, and a fresh reminder to everybody, there's no World Cup qualifying. So this was the biggest significance in terms of matches before World Cup. There's nothing in between. It's all fluff, especially look at the friendlies that we have. Fluff. So this has to be the grading system. And if you don't do it in a group stage here, well, what does that mean going forward? That doesn't mean he can't advance if he's still the manager, but in terms of holding people accountable to the expectations of the job, for me, that's an issue. So, Brian, if you are U.S. Soccer, is it the right time to move on? And if so, do you wait to find somebody, or would you say, no, we're going to keep them until we find that right person?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Because typically you'd want to find your coach before you would replace him. But because there's nothing of significance, you can understand if they decide in their meetings that this is not the direction they want to go. And then you have some friendlies, 3 friendlies in September, that you can, put someone in place that will be able to do the job. And you have 6 months to figure out who you want to have. So the biggest question is going to be if they want to replace their manager. And if they do want to replace their manager, now's a perfect time. It doesn't matter because there's nothing significant that lies ahead.
We got to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation, and then we'll talk about what's next. What are the options? And man, this is not a great night to be us, and especially that morning footy is going to be crazy for me next morning. But don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a second. YouTube fam, this one's for you. We still got 2 more minutes before we're back on the Galazzo Network live. So send in some questions. I'll try and get to as many as I can before we go back to Galazzo Network live. And then, mind you, we're going to go another 10 minutes after the show to stay with you guys, stick with you guys on YouTube. So where do you guys stand on this U.S. men's national team? Where do you stand on players in this tournament? And where do you stand on Greg Berhalter? Is this, just a moment you could say, oh, we can get by it? Or is it time now to move into the search for a new manager? So I
love the comments, Charlie.
Yeah, there's a lot of vitriol, if you will.
Yes.
So right now we have a lot of why stick with Berhalter. Can either of you come up with a reason of why we should stick with Berhalter?
No, I mean, I can't at the moment. Look, I think Brian touched on it. If we're going to make a change, now's the time to do it, right? You got a period. I can't believe for 1 minute that there's still. We were told that, what was it? Ernie said a while back, right? There was this list of guys. There was always this list of guys. That this isn't in someone's thought process right now, right? That like this is they would be completely blind to the fact that something might have to change leading into this. We got three. I say we just got beat by Panama, so I feel like I should give Panama a little bit more respect than I have. So Panama, we've got three friendlies coming up.
Hold on a sec. Listen, the Panama defeat people should look past that. That is down to.
I get it, bro.
Not getting a result, I totally agree with you. But the defeat to Panama is not what we should be looking at, right? It should be.
We're back on Golazo Network Live, by the way. We were just on YouTube.
I'm not.
Now Tony and Brian going at it right now.
I thought I was really clear, man. This team hasn't gotten better since the World Cup. I don't know how much clearer I can be than that. But I don't want to disrespect Panama because they just did what we wanted to do, and we're trying to do. So, but we got three. Let's call it just. Average, very average. They're all CONCACAF games in my opinion. They just don't happen to reside in CONCACAF. This is where I think we have to make a change. And I said this, and for those people, and I'm still not on the bandwagon of you lose tonight, you get fired. Again, it's big picture for me. We have not improved. If there's anybody that thinks that this team with the group of players that we have should be performing game in and game out the way we currently are performing, I just got to give up doing what I'm doing. Because
go ahead.
I
was gonna say, Tony, you're spot on, I think, with what you're saying, because it's not about the Uruguay game, but it's about the tournament and not advancing out of the group, and then throw in the Colombia match, and then throw in the Trinidad game last year. You could throw in all these little moments where the U.S. just didn't have it, and you're questioning where's the progress from 2022. Where we had young kids who now have that experience, and that was always the excuse. We have young players, they're supposed to make mistakes. Not anymore. Those excuses are gone. It felt like every match was our average age is 23 and 0.6 years. It's like, stop that. We got to take a break, another brief break. We're gonna continue 10 more minutes on Golazo Network. But when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation around what the U.S. men's national team should do around Greg Berhalter and how we feel about it. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
Welcome back to Galazzo Network. This is Call What You Want. I'm your host, Charlie Davies, and I'm not your normal host, as Jimmy Conrad is too busy doing Fox shows and wearing goat heads and getting slapped in the face. But respect to Chief Brody, Michael Barroza, who's like, Charlie's got one AirPod in one ear, the wired earbud in the other. I got my producer talking in one ear, Vince Garcia with the nice transition. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm not your normal host, but I'm making it work. And I'm joined with two U.S. national team legends, Brian McBride and Tony Meola. And this is not a pleasant night. This isn't a pleasant conversation we're having. But we're talking about the future of the U.S. men's national team head coach and Greg Berhalter. And is this the right time? And Brian, do you see a reason why they should keep Greg? Or are you kind of in the same boat as us? If this is a buildup of, moments that you want more and you fail in a massive competition when the expectations were always to get out of the group, given how kind this grouping was for the U.S. men's national team?
Yeah, Charlie, there's no doubt. I mean, you want more. I mean, that's neither here nor there, because the expectations coming into this tournament was to at least, the minimum was to get out of the group. And then it was who you wanted to talk to was, for me, was the semifinals. And so, yeah, this is where there's going to be some serious conversations. And you could see every reason for U.S. soccer to go in a different direction. The thing is, we have no idea what the main directive is going to be. And I guarantee you, Greg knows that this is going to be a big question mark. And those conversations are going to be had.
I just want to put this in perspective. See, Greg Berhalter here, he has done well in CONCACAF. And I want to make sure, you see his record, you see some of the big trophies. I look at the Mexico matches in Nations League and, that 0-0 draw at Azteca, although then we really take the microscope and look at this Mexican side and we say, damn, Mexico sucks. This isn't the Mexico team that we've all grew up playing against. This isn't the Mexico team loaded with stars. And you both know, when we played Mexico back in the day, you were running. You knew possession was all theirs, and we were chasing, and we were waiting for that moment. And if you lost the ball, I remember even from youth national team days, when you had the ball and you gave it away, you knew you were gonna have to run for 10 minutes, 15 minutes sometimes, whatever it is, long periods of time.
Tony wouldn't have to.
And not Tony. Tony was just barking at us to work harder. But this Mexican side is trash. They're trash. It's nowhere near the quality that they used to have. So you got to, I think, put that in perspective when you see the results against Mexico. But I want to throw this out there. U.S. were eliminated in the group stage for the first time in 20 tournaments hosted at home. They also become the first Copa America hosts in history to fail to advance out of their group.
That's a big stat.
That's some significant stuff right there. So, Brian, you were within U.S. soccer. You did have a glimpse at seeing how they pick a coach and what are the options of a coach who would be interested in the U.S. men's national team job. If you did make the move now, what type of coaches do you think they'd be looking at? And I know we're talking about salaries. We can't pay the craziest salaries in the world, but having a World Cup on home soil, what type of managers do you think they'd talk to, and which type of managers do you think they'd be interested in?
Yeah, it's a great question, Charlie, because there's a board that makes these decisions, and certainly they get great information from people that are in charge of the technical side. So eventually, it's going to come down to a couple different things. It's come down to finances, because right now with the quality side of things, which I think is great, in the sense that if they let Greg go and they're going to bring someone in, you would think they'd have to bring a big name in. And then that means a challenge to the budget. It means a challenge to the equality side. And, committing to something like that is fine and great, but you also have to look at the repercussions. That doesn't make anything like, I'm sure right now the comments are going crazy about people. How can this be? Let's fund, we'll send the fund. And US Soccer will do that. But I think there's a structure on the board side of it that might limit where you can go with a hire. I don't know that for sure because things can change, and with the World Cup coming up, they could open up the budget. But there's many more questions rather than, do we want to find somebody that's here? Do we see somebody in the names that we've already put aside that can come in and do a better job than what Greg's doing? And are they available? And those are all the questions that are going to come in from the front office side of things. So we'll see where that goes.
Are there any names that you'd like to see US Soccer talking to? Like, at least, have that conversation. Is there a coach that comes to mind and be like, I think he'd be good for this group?
We've talked about this, Charlie, and I love how people don't see and see this. I think there's if they are going to move on from Greg, it has to be where a coach with character, a coach who has personality, a coach who can connect with players, because that matters. And we have a young group that is really close and really tight. And so you've got to create that bond immediately to help them progress to that next level. So I've said this before, if there's a change, and I know that Jurgen's taking a break, but if you can get Jurgen Klopp, hell yeah. I mean, I think his personality and his connection with the fan side of things would be pretty interesting.
Tony, when you talk about a manager for this group of players, and I'll be the first to say it, I mean, I was saying this last year, I think a European manager, and it's not because Europe is better than America and Americans can't do it. I think with this group, to build them further than where they are in terms of the ideas and being creative, you need a manager who has won, who has achieved, who's accomplished a lot, but also who's respected. And that's why where my thought process was, who can come in here and say, you know what, I'm going to play the best players who I think can help this team win games. And there's no, relationships that may play into a player playing in a certain position or getting called in or what have you. So do you feel the same way? And what type of manager do you think would get the most out of this group?
I will say this, just to your last point first about a manager that's playing this guy over another guy. I think we're pretty much seeing our best players, right? I mean, would you agree? I mean, is there one or two maybe out there that everyone can make an argument about? Yeah, but I think that's every national team. It's every club team, right? You're always going to make an argument about the guy that's on the outside looking in. I get it. I don't necessarily, for me, and I've been on record saying this, and I won't change. I don't care if it's European or not European. But all the other qualities that you mentioned, respect from the players, understanding of the players, being able to connect with the players, all of those, we'll call them intangibles, right? Those are really important. With that said, I mean, I've been pretty critical of this group that we hear so much about all of these relationships. We've had all of these relationships since every team that I've ever been on, and I was on teams way before you guys were there, and then you guys were on teams
before I was even born, Tony.
Yeah, I knew you were coming somewhere with it, but like
seriously,
again, I just never know which one.
Before I was born, this guy,
you're doing that to him at this time. Well, I shouldn't say that. To be honest, I don't really care if you like the coach or not. How many guys played on teams where they don't like the coach, but they're great players? Like, I just want a great team. That's what I want. I want a great team, and when I look at this group of players, I think that they can be a great team. Of course, it would be great. We have a barbecue every week, but I get all of that. I just want a good team that attacks with this group of players. And
is and I go every week, not necessarily fearing the worst, but I want to expect the best. So that's what I want, Charlie. I really do. I don't know who they're going to pick. I have no idea if they're going to make a change. But yeah, you can mention Klopp and you can mention Pochettino and all these other guys, and I don't know if we can even get any of those guys for some of the reasons Brian laid out. But that's what I want, man. I'd rather have a better team than a great coach, but I know they come hand in hand more often than not,
Yeah. Well, now is, I think, the time that we see why a hire like Matt Crocker is supposed to be so instrumental for U.S. soccer. When he comes in with these ideas and says, I'm gonna hold everyone accountable. I'm coming in with an objective to get U.S. soccer to play at the highest level, given the World Cup is on home soil. So now this is his moment. We saw what he did for the U.S. women's national team in hiring Emma Hayes, and that's a massive coup for the U.S. women's team. But now it's time. The U.S. has underperformed. They've underwhelmed us, and they failed. So where do we go from here? What's the next step? Given we saw the friendlies of Canada, Panama, New Zealand, that's not much of a test, considering we just went, a little bit of a good match where we felt, man, this is something we want to see more of against a better team, a better opponent in Uruguay. So we'd like to see more of that rather than what we would see in CONCACAF. So with that being said, an incredible show of Call It What You Want, given the tough circumstances. I want to thank everybody in the comments, YouTube section, everyone on Golazo Network for watching us. Stay tuned for our wrap-up show on Wednesday. But this is Call It What You Want. I'm Charlie Davies, joined with my U.S. Women's National Team brothers, Brian McBride and Tony Meola. And that is it. Have a good night, everybody. See you on the flip side. See you in the morning on Morning Footy.